Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Basler. I'm the Executive Director of Oregon AFSCME, and we are here to talk to you about settling the state contract. Let me introduce Jade.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jade McCready. I'm the state program manager at Oregon AFSCME and the chief negotiator for our statewide central table bargaining team.
And hello, I'm Milana Grant. I am the comm specialist and I will be facilitating this.
So, as I mentioned, we have some exciting news for you. We have settled the Central Table state contract. We had some great success in a very challenging year. The state we were hard pressed to get the state to come to the table with something reasonable. The economic uncertainty that was floating around, the amazing contract we got last time, all sort of conspired to make this a very difficult year. But we worked together. The bargaining team was amazing and dedicated hours and hours of their time to come up with some really creative ideas to get you the best deal possible. And they worked closely with our political team to push the legislature to give as much money as possible to state workers so we can get you what you deserve. Maybe not all the way what you deserve, but at least a lot of the way there.
Yep. So today we're going to go ahead and jump into some of the frequently common questions that have come up since we wrapped up bargaining. So we've been kind of compiling those and we're going to jump into those today so that we can hopefully get some of that stuff answered.
Awesome. So the first question is, what are the top highlights from the Central Table Bargaining TA?
Yeah, so I'd say this is probably the most common question, in particular around the economics. So I'm just going to jump into maybe like the top five. When you get your ballots, your bargaining ratification ballots, take a look at those. That'll have all the details. But for the top five, the first COLA will be a 2.5% COLA. That will be coming on February 1st of 2026. Then there will be a 4% COLA that will come on January 1st of 2027. And then probably the biggest highlight of this bargaining cycle was the ad step. We really focused in on this ad step. That was the bargaining team's probably top priority. It was kind of an uphill battle. The state generally does an ad step about every 12 years. The last ad step we had was 6 years ago. So this will be implementing in less than 8 years. But the bargaining team just had to stand strong on that. And so the ad step will go into effect this biennium. It'll go into effect on February 1st of 2027. And anybody who is topped out and has been at the state for at least 10 years on that date will receive it immediately. And then everybody else will receive it on their salary eligibility date. So that's kind of the normal process that the state does is it implements on everyone's salary eligibility date once it goes into effect. But this bargaining cycle, we did negotiate some additional details around it, really focused around recognizing those that have longevity with the state. So if you've been with the state for at least 10 years and you're topped out, you'll get it immediately on February 1st instead of through the salary eligibility date. And then we also had some changes to the bereavement language. So there was some language that we worked out over the course of the last couple of years in a letter of agreement that's been incorporated into the contract permanently that says that instead of kind of breaking up bereavement based off of family member, it's you receive bereavement, the 24 hours of bereavement based off of someone who is of close affinity to you. So it no longer has to be a specific family member. If you determine that that person is of close affinity, then you qualify for the 24 hours of bereavement leave. And then we also added an additional 8 hours of bereavement leave in the event of a coworker passing away. So that might be someone who maybe isn't of super close affinity, but definitely has an impact on your day to day. So that was a priority for the bargaining team also to make sure that there was some additional bereavement leave in those situations. So that's an additional 8 hours per biennium. And then we also increased the hazardous conditions inclement weather leave to $4 per hour. So if you have to work during a closure for hazardous conditions, inclement weather, then you'll receive an additional $4 per hour. And then I know that there is a lot of questions about biweekly pay. That's definitely been probably one of our next biggest questions, but we're going to jump into that a little bit later. So I'll just wrap up with those top five and then just take a look at your bargaining summaries for all the details and all the other proposals.
Folks also have been asking what the difference is between Central Table and their local tables.
I think that's a really good question. The central table is deals with issues that sort of cross every agency or every place we work. You know, the big stuff: healthcare costs, COLAs, leave, bereavement leave, for instance, that is addressed in this contract. Well, the local tables really focus on the things that are very specific towards that local. Does your local have a classification that no other local has? And so maybe we need to think about differentials for that. Are there certain working conditions that only apply to your local because of the unique nature of the work you do? Now, it's not always a clear line. Some things are pretty clear, but there are some gray areas. And I'll say we try to push those issues that are to the most advantageous spot. Sometimes we try to push them to the central table. Sometimes we try to push them to the local table. It really depends on what the members want and need. And I should also say the state does the same thing. So it is kind of a dance we do with the state. But for the most part, though, the central table deals with the big things that go across the table, and the local tables deal with the very central, the very things that are very key to those locals. And I think for the most part, all the local tables have wrapped up, and now that the central table has, for the last few that are out there, they have I think about 2 weeks after, or 3 weeks after the central table is TA'd to wrap those tables up.
Speaking of ratification, how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question because we do have the two different tables. So a lot of folks ask, well, so how am I ratifying this contract? Do I ratify central table and local table separately? So the answer is that they're combined. So what we end up doing is we take everything that we negotiated at central table, all of those statewide things that Joe just talked about, and then we combine it with everything that your individual locals negotiated at the local level into one ratification vote. Because ultimately, the things from both of those tables make up your contract. So when we put the ratification vote out, you'll be voting on both of them. When you get your ballots, you'll see what we'll say a central table bargaining summary and then a local table bargaining summary. So we'll kind of split them out, but it is one contract collectively as a whole for you to have over the next couple of years. So we do have nearly all of the tables are done. They have until tomorrow to finish up bargaining officially, but I think we only have one that's finishing. There's 20 total. And then everybody will work on getting their ratification votes out. I think about half of the locals plan to put their ratification votes out early this week. And then there may be a few that will trickle into early next week, just because they're going to do some information sessions and things like that. All locals will have their ratifications done by August 31st, because that's how long our current contract is extended for. So everything will be done by then. So what will happen is at some point this week or next week, you'll get a ratification ballot from what's called Election Buddy. So it will come through an online platform. It will go to your email and to the phone number that we have on file via a text message. Each person still has just one identifying code attached to them. So even if you use the text or the email or both, it'll just still log in one vote. And then everyone will have a certain amount of time to vote. How long it is can kind of vary local to local. Most locals do 7 days, but you might have a local that might decide to do 10 days or 14 days for another reason. But most locals will do 7 days just because it's so quick to do the online vote. So what will happen is that ballot will go out, you'll log your vote. It's really fast. It takes just, a couple of minutes. And then 7 days or 10 days later, however long your vote is out for, we will wrap up. And then once that ratification is done, the new contract is officially in place. And that's the contract that you'll use moving forward. It does take a little bit of time to get the updated contract and all of that. So if you have questions along the way, wondering, what piece is implemented when, just reach out to, your local president or your rep and they can help guide you through that.
Okay, going back to the ad step, some folks have been wondering why the ad step is going into effect in 2027. It feels like we just had one not that long ago. So the economic climate's pretty tough right now. How come we're getting another one so soon?
Well, as soon as we finished the last contract, it became clear that this was a major priority for our membership. It was one of the things that the bargaining team sort of it is a go home issue. We have to have this to sort of give balance and to sort of address some of the economic pressure our members are facing. So we worked very hard from day one, knowing that was an issue that we had to have, even though it did come much earlier than normally we would have expected. We also worked closely with SEIU, the other big labor union that negotiates with the state, And that was also one of their priorities. And so we worked very closely with them to sort of join our strategies together to pull that down. It was very hard, and it took a monumental effort from our bargaining team to sort of get this ad step because it costs a lot and eats a lot away, a lot of the salary pot. But not only we were able to get that, we also got some pretty significant colas. So it was a testament to how creative and thoughtful our bargaining team was. Okay, so, and one of the reasons why it started in 2027 and not right away was because it costs so much money. And we have to work within a strict limit of what the legislature sets for the amount of money we can spend on anything that goes to state workers. So by pushing it back to 2027, we were able to secure that ad step. If we had done it any earlier, it would have had a devastating effect on the colas. And we know that you need both colas and the ad step so that everyone benefits from this contract.
All right. This one is a big one. A lot of folks are wondering what's going on with biweekly pay.
That's probably the next most commonly asked question is related to biweekly pay. So I think maybe I'll go over a little bit of the history just to kind of explain how we got where we are. The state has been looking at trying to change the pay structure for a number of years, even prior to Workday's implementation. I think over the last couple of years since Workday's implementation, that's kind of heightened up a bit. And I think what a lot of the bargaining teams have kind of recognized over the last year or two is that there was going to be a transition to biweekly pay eventually. And we were really focused on a couple of key pieces. First and foremost, ensuring that it was a good transition, right? What happened with Workday just simply can't happen here. And the reason that was such a disaster is because it was so abrupt. The state didn't put in the proper planning. They just simply made that change. Despite the unions filing cease and desists and concern letters, they moved forward with making that change just completely abruptly without the proper planning in place. So what we didn't want to end up happening is a couple months from now, we were sitting here with, the state just simply implementing biweekly pay and us having to demand a bargain over the impacts and filing actions. We really wanted to make sure that there was proper planning in place. So our number one goal was to push that implementation out so that we could have that transition. So biweekly pay will be going into effect, but not until mid 2027. So that gives us a 2-year period to really work out all of the logistics. During that 2 years, there will be a statewide committee that all the unions are going to participate on, really focused around addressing all of the logistics around the transition. What's it going to look like for folks? Do we need to do pilots? What's the impacts going to be? Really making sure that they're communicating that information out to the state workforce so that you're prepared when the time comes. And we need a long time to do that. We need a solid 2 years to do that. So those committees are going to kick off right after ratification, and then that'll give us that 2-year period. And then the second thing that folks were really focused on was compensation. Right? We know that there is the class action lawsuit that was kind of designed to address the damages that happened from the Workday transition, but there was still this gap around making sure that you're compensated for the biweekly pay transition. It's going to be an adjustment, right? And so having that compensation kind of gives that buffer. So what was negotiated kind of at two places, we were negotiating at the same time at the bargaining table, and then also for the Workday grievance. The class action lawsuit was happening over here. We were negotiating the grievance over here, and then we were also bargaining. So there was a lot of pieces that were going on at the same time. What we ended up negotiating related to the biweekly pay transition compensation was a $1,700 one-time payment. That will go into effect and will be given to folks 90 days prior to the implementation of biweekly pay. And then also a 40-hour allotment of paid leave will also go into effect 90 days prior to that transition. So folks will get that one-time payment, and then they'll also get that leave. And you can choose to either use that leave or cash it out. It's whatever your preference is. It will cash out at your specific pay rate. So those were kind of the two primary focuses of the bargaining team. When we knew that that transition was likely going to take place, we really wanted to make sure that we had the proper preparation and that you were compensated. So that implementation is going to happen in mid-July or in July of 2027, but we will make sure we have significant planning leading up to that point.
And if folks have specific questions about the lawsuits, who should they reach out to?
That's great. So there's a group of class action attorneys that have put together the lawsuit. Now we instigated the lawsuit and facilitated our members joining that class action, but it is run separately from ASME. They should be communicating with you, but of course, sending correspondence to you about the settlement that was reached around the class action lawsuit. But I should also say that that lawsuit was incredibly helpful during this negotiation, putting added pressure on the state to come up with uh, some reasonable things to the table so that we could settle this contract.
And we will also have some more information coming out soon on the grievance settlement as well. So just keep an eye out for that over the next week or two. We'll get that information out.
Great. That's all the frequently asked questions we have for today.
Okay, awesome. So thank you all for the questions that have come up over the last couple of weeks. Of course, reach out with any more questions to your president, to your rep, to anybody. We are here to help and answer any questions. Keep an eye out for your ratification ballots. Those should be coming out. A lot of folks will get them this week. Some folks will get them next week. But keep an eye out for those, and we will let folks know when we get through the process.
Great. And I just want to thank Jade, our staff who worked so hard on this, the bargaining team, the presidents, the members who showed up to lobby and do so much work to push this contract to where we needed to be in order to settle it. So thank you all, and thank you for keeping Oregon working.